Hello. How many characters is too many characters? How many is too few? How many do you need? I got a question in a previous video about what is the right amount of characters to add to your comic, and I thought I would address that today. I'm doing a lot better. Thank you for all of your lovely comments that you left. Okay, I don't know if I'm doing a lot better, but I'm doing better. And my dog is also doing okay. I'll go into it at the end and won't bore the people here that are just here for the comics, just here for the vibes, okay? So, characters. What is the limit? The limit is there isn't a limit. Like, you can technically go forever. Like, there's no real limit to the amount of characters that you can add. I add a lot of characters just for the heck of it. I'm not a good person to ask if you want to know how to keep your cast small. I recommend that you do, but then I don't do it. A lot of the times when I add a bunch of characters, they're usually more like filler characters rather than any sort of main character with any substance. I like to create a lot of interesting NPCs almost. You'll find that in 9 Point, I add lots of characters. Every time I add a little group dynamic, I add a whole bunch of characters. But that's just kind of something I'm interested in doing with 9 Point. There's a lot of ways to bring things down a bit, but why do I do it with 9 Point? That would be a better question, right? Is to ask myself, why do I feel the need to add 5 million characters to 9 Point? And I guess I do it because it fleshes out the world a bit. Whenever I'm adding a new side character, one that's not going to have a plot, but just kind of exists in the world and has kind of a vague personality, they just kind of fill a space. I guess those kind of characters are me expanding the 9 Point universe, the 9 Point world. I think that can be useful. And then I give them kind of minor roles in the story. They're kind of spear carriers. That's a term for a character that maybe has a line of dialogue or two, but isn't really integral. I think you could get rid of most characters in 9 Point and still have the story. 9 Point's an epic fantasy comic that I work on, not what's being drawn here. But I like having all of these side characters because it just gives it more depth, more interest to me when I want to create a world that has a big scope and it feels big and feels fleshed out. I think adding lots of characters is helpful to that. I guess I have that happen in Avo a bit, not as much. Avo has a lot of characters that are very integral to it and not a lot of side characters. I guess it's just another philosophy. Avo is it started as an epic fantasy novel that I have, and I'm doing a comic version of it, and it has lots of characters in the background, but they're not fleshed out in the same way that I would with 9 Point. And I guess the reason, I'm not sure. It's also I think when I'm thinking about 9 Points, it's a little more, not episodic. I think whenever I go into something thinking about it as a comic, I maybe think of it in a little more television type way. Maybe it's weird because 9 Point feels way more direct and way more punchy with the plot from what I'm reading, but I think the pacing issues just become from Avo being a novel versus 9 Point being a comic first and foremost. I'm definitely intrigued by that thought. I have comics that have far fewer characters and they're not epic stories. I have Pretty Mouth, and Pretty Mouth kind of suffers from it. Pretty Mouth has very few characters, and the reason that I picked very few characters was I wanted it to stay small. I wanted it to be very direct. And I think what Pretty Mouth misses out on in doing that is it's the ratio of characters is a bit off, because in Pretty Mouth, almost every character except one or two is involved in the magical nonsense of the story, and there's not a lot of people outside of it to really give you the impression that the magic stuff is out of the ordinary. I don't think you need a lot of characters to do that. In fact, I think that's something that I rectified in the Magpie, which is the comic that's being drawn right now, but Magpie ended up also ballooning in scope and size just because of that. That's the problem with a lot of characters, is it's just going to get big. Your story will get big because I guess you can have it's hard. I think it's hard to have a lot of side characters that don't have plots if you don't also have a lot of side characters that do have plots. It's kind of like an illusion that you can create. Whereas, like, okay, thinking about my comic, The Scourge of Nine Point. Like, there's three main characters. Well, that's actually four. There's four main characters, and then there's like a whole bunch of side characters that have their own little in-depth plots that are going on, and then there are also like tertiary characters that don't have huge plots. They have like maybe like a sentence of like description about like what they're up to and whatnot. And I think that it's hard to have those third characters without the second characters, because otherwise you have your main characters and then everyone aside from your main characters feels not very fleshed out. There's kind of like a curve that you want to create, like a nice smooth curve. I also do it so that I can kill off characters. Like when you have a lot of characters, it gives you plenty of opportunity to like flesh one out a little bit and then kill them for like not brownie points, to make everyone sad. You know, sometimes you need to kill a character. It's a very useful tool in your writing toolbox. So like having a lot of characters, like that is one of the like good things about it. It's not like it stops me in the magpie. The pretty mouth, like people die. Like you don't need tons of characters. Like when you have very few characters, each death is very impactful. But if you want like, I don't want to say Game of Thrones, but if you want like some amount of death, like you can kill off like spear holders and stuff. And yeah, like the level of impact definitely lessens the more characters you have, but it still is helpful. Like I don't think there's like a right amount of characters to have in a story, obviously. I think that having like a wide story has its advantages, and then having something tighter also has its advantages. There's also the fact that when you're making a comic, you have to design all of these characters. It becomes a lot more like difficult. I'd recommend in general not doing what I'm talking about with the large scope of characters. Like it's just overwhelming and it's not great for your first comic. It's nice to like trim things down and go small, because each side character, each main character you add is going to exponentially increase your workload. I think that's something that needs to always be pressed upon you, is that the more characters you add, the more exponentially large your story gets, because you have to deal with you have an introduction, but then you have to deal with the middle of the story and the conclusion. Things just branch and they get bigger. Like stories get bigger from the opening. They're like trees, you know? They have their trunk and then they branch out, and it gets super unmanageable if you're not on top of that. And like I said, you can't really add a bunch of like lesser impactful characters into the fray without also adding some like more impactful characters to the fray. Like think when you're thinking about like adding characters, the type of characters that are going to really like explode your plot in the sense that they're going to make them really big. Just think, if this was like an animated thing, would this character need a voice actor? Do I need to hire on a voice actor for this character? And if the answer is yes, then you're adding a lot of work to yourself. Like, not because you would be necessarily actually hiring a voice actor or whatever, but like as soon as you have a voice character who has like someone on the payroll, like that is going to be a character that you have to deal with, and they're going to have like plot consequences on your story or what have you. Yeah, so that's my advice on a character size, limits, whatever. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too far in depth or whatever. Obviously, like I'm just tired today. We took Matica to the vet, and she is on antibiotics now for her like swollen face. Matica's my dog, by the way. And yeah, that was exhausting. She needs dental surgery, but like I said, like we are between the monies right now. Um, Thankfully, like I don't have to feel too bad about that because like the vet is booked all the way out, and she wouldn't be having the surgery immediately anyways. But hopefully things look up for us. Thanks for like all of your support as usual. Like continuing to watch my videos and stuff like that helps me a whole bunch. I'm gonna go edit this video. My voice is really tired too. Like, I don't know, man. I've just been going too hard. I've just been going like crazy. Okay. So I'm gonna curl up, watch some YouTube, and just chill tonight. So thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. God, my voice is just tired.